Welcome back, everyone, to the Eat, Drink, Explore radio show on this Saturday morning. I'm your host, Randall White, and I hope that you're having just a fantastic start to your morning. Grab some coffee, get a good scone at your local bakery, and sit back, and you can listen to this via your iPhone, iPad, right there with our new streaming apps. Or if you're hopping into your car and you're headed downtown right now for something, and you're in the San Luis Obispo area, you can listen live on Crush 92.5 FM. All right, recent polling shows that the vast majority of Americans, we're talking 9 out of 10, and some surveys showing as high as 96% of people believe genetically modified foods should be labeled. They're not saying they're against genetically modified foods. They just want to know whether they're in the products they're buying or not. And currently, the only way to absolutely know that is to buy something that is labeled organic. And that can be costly at times. You know, I try to buy everything organic, but it really does run up the grocery bill a little bit. So sometimes I do it just because I want to make sure I'm not buying a GMO product. So GMO is sort of the shorthand for genetically modified. So if there was just a little label on there that said contains no GMO, but it didn't say organic, you know, I might buy that. If there were like 3 different options to buy, that might be the one I choose. So in my mind, always information is power. And maybe that comes from, you know, being a news anchor over the years and such, but having the tools to know what you're buying is always a good thing. And maybe that's why 96% of people are like, yeah, we want to know. Well, Californians will have an opportunity to make that choice coming up here in November because there's an initiative on the ballot. We always have a bunch of initiatives. Doesn't seem to be controversial at this point because, you know, with 9 out of 10 people being for it. But here's the thing. There is some big money on the opposite side. So we will be flooded with advertising. And you know what that's like. It's going to be nonstop advertising on candidates and everything between now and November. So you'll hear a lot of arguments for not having GMO on the label. Well, right now on the phone with us, with more on the upcoming ballot initiative, is Stacy Malkan of California Right to Know. And she's the one that got it on the ballot. So let's find out from her. Stacy, do you expect a big wave of this initiative, of that sort of advertising?
Good morning, Randall. Yes, unfortunately, we do. We're going to see a flood of advertising that tries to convince people that labeling is scary and weird and expensive, and of course it's none of those things.
Right.
It's, you know, as you said, a tool for us to use to know what we're eating, and it's a tool that people want. So we're really hopeful that we have an excellent chance to pass this in November, but we're asking the voters to be really vigilant about what you're seeing and hearing. Check out the facts. You know, don't just believe what you're hearing on TV.
Right. And Stacy, we've seen it before we just had an election, and when it was first put to the voters, would you vote for an additional tax on cigarettes to fund cancer research? Overwhelmingly, people were like, absolutely. When it came down to it, I never did see the final numbers. It was losing at the end. Did it eventually lose?
They're saying that it looks like it lost. They're still counting some absentee ballots. But yeah, that was concerning because there was so much support and there was a flood of TV ads, and then the support drops off. And you know, they're always trying to convince people that things like the language is confusing, and maybe it's a good idea, but they shouldn't have done it this way.
There's the one, Stacy, right there. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what they do is they say, they come with a positive approach. This is a great idea, but this isn't the right piece of legislation, right?
Right. So what people need to know about the Right to Know initiative to label GMOs, it's a simple, clear, straightforward initiative. It just requires labeling. As you said, it's something that 9 out of 10 people want, and we're going to make it happen in November.
Let's go down the list of arguments against doing this. What will be the main points that they say? That it's too expensive?
I think that they will try to convince people that grocery costs will rise, and there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever to back that up. It's not true. What we're asking companies to do with this initiative is add a tiny bit of ink to their label. Just like they label fat content or calories, they would have to add that the product contains or may contain genetically engineered ingredients. That's it, just a few words on their already existing ingredient deck. The initiative gives them 18 months to do it, and companies typically change their labels in that time frame anyway. So there's no cost to consumers with this initiative.
So a full year and a half, you're right. Most packages go through some sort of redesign throughout that period. So at that point, you would just work in the GMO label. Now, would they say that it's too complicated to know whether all of their ingredients have, could possibly be a genetically modified source?
It's pretty easy to figure that out, from my understanding. Companies typically know. So we don't think it will be a burden at all on companies. And if they don't know for sure, they can put may contain genetically engineered ingredients. Or, check with their suppliers and find out, because certainly companies should know what they're putting in their food anyway.
So similar to when you pick up a package and it says this may have been on a conveyor belt where peanuts or something were processed, they don't know that it was, but I've seen that many times. This may come from a facility that processes nuts.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's required because a lot of people are allergic, and it's just a way to add more information and give people, more choices and more power over their own choices about what they buy and eat and feed their families.
Now, California would join just about every other industrialized nation in the world, right, in having foods labeled GMO?
Yes, absolutely. More than 40 other countries already require labeling of GMOs.
Including China, right?
Yes, China,
Okay.
Japan, all of Europe, not the United States. And California would be the first state to require labeling of GMOs. There is one law in Alaska that requires labeling of GMO fish.
Oh.
And that's, of course, relevant because we're about to see the possible introduction of the first genetically engineered fish. The FDA is considering approving it, and that would be, in the markets and on our dinner plates without people knowing that it's a genetically engineered fish, unless we get this labeling.
We are speaking with Stacy Malkan. She is with California Right to Know, the group that got the initiative on this November ballot to require food in California that is sold with genetically modified ingredients to be labeled as such. And so you will be seeing a lot of advertising in the coming months as we head into the election that will discuss this point. Most of the money, I imagine, coming from the large food producers and that don't want to have this added burden of putting the labeling on there. I have a question for you, Stacy. Why does it matter? Well, first of all, I love science. And I believe that science makes our life better in so many different ways. Understanding, where we came from, all the way up to, feeding everyone. And I get it. I understand why we would want to, in some cases, genetically modify things. And I'm not always opposed to it. But I do want to know when I eat it. What are some of the known dangers of genetically modified products?
Well, here's the thing. If you love science, then genetically modified products are concerning because there are no required safety studies in the United States. That's another area in which the U.S. stands alone, basically in the industrialized world, in not requiring safety studies. So there is a very disturbing lack of long-term health studies on GMOs. There are studies showing cause for concern, links to allergies, other toxicities, certainly environmental impacts that we're seeing with crops that have been sprayed with pesticides, and now the weeds have evolved out of the pesticides, and they're looking at using more toxic pesticides. And some of those chemicals are, of course, ending up in our bodies.
Right.
So, lots of reason for concern, and certainly a need to further study the long-term health and environmental impacts before, these crops get out into the environment and can't be taken back, which, of course, we're already seeing. But again, this all gets back to consumer choice, that we should have the right to know what we're buying, what we're eating, and make an informed choice for ourselves.
Like I said at the top of the segment, Stacy, information is power. So why not vote yourself to have more information, in the coming months. Stacy Malkan of California Right to Know. More information on your website, which is californiarighttoknow.org.
carighttknow.org.
All right, Stacy, thank you for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.
In the meantime, buy organic. That's how you know there's no GMO products, because that's part of the organic rules. We're back in just a moment, headed to Colorado.